can't expect Boris Johnson to be treated like the person who was actually in charge of the COVID-19 inquiry. Honestly, there are some days where I have to give my head a wobble to make sure that I haven't woken up in a parallel universe or on the Star Trek holodeck. Luckily, I guess, for Boris Johnson, luckily perhaps for you, because I accept there's only so much you can bear of being reminded of his utter unfitness for any office at all, never mind the highest in the land. We have the immigration statistics. And a little bit of my heart sinks at those words because I have been doing this job for quite a long time now, and it takes a long time for the psychological tanker to turn around. So even if the public feeling about a story has changed or about an issue has changed, for me, the psychology that I attach to that story, the feelings actually that it engenders in me stay the same. So despite the fact that it contributed in large part to this program becoming so successful, I didn't technically enjoy my duels and jousts with racists back in the day. The clips that, apart perhaps from the ones about which law it actually was that Brexit voters were looking forward to not having to obey anymore. Spoiler alert, they could never think of any. Apart from that, it was probably the dealings with racists on this programme that promoted us into the Premier League of radio shows. But I didn't enjoy it for two reasons. Number one, it's like looking into the abyss. And Nietzsche said something about the dangers of looking into the abyss that I can never quite remember. And number two, I don't think anybody who rang in to tell me that they were voting for Brexit because there were too many brown faces in Sainsbury's, I don't think any of them ever went away feeling helped. You know, I don't know that we ever really brought any light into their lives. The determination to believe that the state of your own existence is a consequence of people arriving from elsewhere with, in many cases, but by no means all, even less than you've got, as opposed to a criminal distribution of wealth that gets worse with every passing year of Tory government, is actually quite depressing. I know that a lot of people listening let the light in because you keep telling me, and I'm not sure there's any more gratifying experience for me professionally than people telling me that until they started listening to this program, they believed what they read in the Daily Mail, for example, or they believed what they read in the Sun. But my heart sinks at the immigration story, even though it necessarily shouldn't, because public feeling, public fury, is not what it was. And I know that because of the polling. I don't know if you can remember the cavalcade of front pages back in the day that detailed the absolute determination to demonize anybody coming here from anywhere else. I mean, the Islamophobia was off the charts. I was with Sadiq Khan last night at the Royal Festival Hall for the launch of his book, and I'm reading the bit about how Zach Goldsmith deployed the worst kind of racist dog whistles in a London mayoral campaign. Zach Goldsmith, perceived as a progressive conservative. And no, this will sound odd, and I may be indulging in a little bit of white privilege, and I appreciate the small boats rhetoric and the refugee rhetoric remains rancid, but things have got a lot better since 2016 in the context of people like Farage trying to turn you against Romanians or Poles. At least the focus of hatred has narrowed down to dinghies now for a lot of people. They're not furious about the Polski sklep on their high street, which the Sun encouraged you to be on the morning after your Brexit vote. Some of the stuff that went on then was absolutely incredible. Everywhere you turned, someone was bellowing about immigration. And then they got what they wanted. They got 52% of the country to vote to smash themselves over the head with a rusty old frying pan. And it stopped. It stopped almost overnight. Started again when Farage turned up at Dover with his Fisher-Price binoculars, rubbing his thighs and trying to get noticed on social media, but not in anything like the same way. And the public opinion, the opinion polling shows that it is no longer anything like a concern as acute as it was when it was lower. Could there be a more pertinent mark of the madness that accompanies this issue than that simple fact? Public concern about immigration is lower than it was when immigration was lower. There are no laws of logic under which that can make sense, I don't think. The idea that immigration is higher than it has ever been, but public concern about immigration is considerably lower than it was back in 2016 when people texting me, "We're out, get over it," were voting to smash themselves over the head with a rusty old frying pan. It's quite incredible, isn't it? And I mean, it leaves me, I'm open to suggestions this morning, it leaves me with a couple of questions. I'll just give you a few examples. Migrant mothers cost NHS £1.3 billion. Illegal migrants flooding into EU. Britain has too many migrants. We can't stop new migrant surge. 2 million EU migrants grab our jobs. Migrants keep on pouring into EU. French to let migrants head to Britain. Migrant crisis will kill off EU. New jobless migrants benefit scandal. Britain faces new migrant crisis. TV Knoll sparks migration row. No end to migrant crisis. That's the one I'd quite like to read more of. How did TV's Knoll spark a migration row? No end to migrant crisis. Migrant crisis will kill off EU. Migrants told to keep out of EU. Did they do the same headline twice, or have they just reproduced? No, they've got the same headline twice. They're two different. No, they can't have done. Anyway, migrants told keep out of EU. Kick out foreign crooks. We can't stop migrants. EU opens door to 79 million from Turkey. Britain faces migrant chaos. Migrants will pay more for NHS. Britain's 1.5 million hidden migrants. Soaring cost of teaching migrant children. Migrants cost Britain £17 billion a year. Britain's 1.5 million hidden migrants. That's the Express. Daily Mail, ready for this? Migrants channel stroll to asylum Britain. Britain's broken borders. PM, why we must not take 3,000 migrant children. Exodus, 3 million UK workers are now foreign. Europe, the real crisis. 1 million more migrants are on their way. How Blair cynically let in 2 million migrants. What a waste. Migrant Mr. Big. The Great Migrant Con. We're stuffed. Anarchy near the UK. Pull the other one, Dave. Surrender on illegal migrants. National Handout Service. Poll chancers. Jungle warfare. Great migrant swindle. Brits not fair. Crushing verdict on open door migration. Deadly cost of our open borders. 1.6 million migrants from the EU settled in Britain. Betrayal of white pupils. Warning on UK Muslim ghettos. Migrants smuggled to UK for just £100. Osborne's 3 million migrant bombshell. Migrant workers blow to Cameron. I've just done that from memory. I haven't done that from memory. I did it from a sheet of paper put in front of me that takes about 20 seconds to collate or to recall. And then it was almost as if the fuel pump was switched off. The gas was turned down. Because suddenly, with the exceptions of one-trick ponies like Farage and a couple of others, suddenly you weren't being urged to hate your Polish next-door neighbour or to dream of the day when there'd be fewer brown faces behind the tills in Sainsbury's. And it has sort of gone away.